This new Cold War is becoming so insane that even the US government is becoming scared and desperate. You see, they are trying to get close to Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan leader that for many years was not even recognized as the legitimate president of that country. Not only that, you see, some of these US officials are now talking about ending the economic sanctions that Venezuela struggled with for several years, actually over 15 years. Why is the US doing this kind of thing? Well, it's actually quite simple. They're scared. They are really scared. It's not so obvious as you will understand. So stick around as we go through many articles to understand what's really behind all of these tensions. US and Venezuelan officials discussed the possibility of easing oil sanctions on Venezuela, but made scant progress toward a deal in their first high level bilateral talks in years. Five sources familiar with the matter said as Washington seeks to separate Russia from one of its key allies. A few weeks ago, Venezuela assured a strong support to Russia as the conflict started in Ukraine. They were condemning the destabilizing actions of the US and NATO in Ukraine. So, they were 100% in the side of Putin and Russia as a whole. And that, of course, is something that frightened US officials because, you see, what if Putin tries to retaliate everything that's happening right now in Ukraine with something similar in Venezuela? You see, a couple of weeks ago, Maduro got to pledge a military cooperation with Russia. The two countries have partnered for a long time. As you can see, Russia previously helped Venezuela design a cryptocurrency and briefly dispatched a pair of its nuclear-capable Tu-160 bombers in 2018. It also provided coronavirus vaccines. 3 months ago, Russia's chief negotiator in talks with the US on tensions over Ukraine said he would neither confirm nor exclude the possibility of Russia sending military assets to Cuba and Venezuela if the US and its allies don't curtail their military activities on Russia's doorstep. And right now, we do have that conflict in Ukraine, and both the US, Europe, the West as a whole is sending weapons, donations to Ukrainians. So maybe, just maybe, Russia is also considering sending weapons, missiles, jets to Venezuela and Cuba. Well, maybe even some other countries. You see, that's the really, really dangerous thing that most people in America are not thinking about. 50% of my dear subscribers are Americans, so some of you may be concerned about this, but I'm sorry, it could get even worse because, you see, it's not just Venezuela and Cuba. There are many other countries in Latin America that, depending on the gravity of the conflict, they could potentially align, maybe if not with Russia, certainly with China. You see, even Mexico, a close ally of the US, declined to impose economic sanctions on Russia. That's quite considerable, don't you think? Not only that, well, right now we have a pretty terrible, bloody conflict in Ukraine. But hypothetically speaking, what if China tries to do something similar in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and so forth. Right? I'm not saying this is going to happen. Nobody really knows. But they have a background. And I'm actually going to do another video about this precise threat for the future. Now, if both China and Russia are dealing with these regional conflicts, you see, China has a lot more influence in Latin American countries than Russia does. Russia has two strong allies, Cuba and Venezuela. Now, China is a different story. They're all over the place, Even in Brazil, they have a strong influence right there. They invested a lot of money. They made strong economic partnerships. So that could become extremely sensitive for the United States precisely because of the geographical proximity. Now, that of course could be avoided if Latin American countries suddenly decided that they're not going to be in either side of the conflict. That would be the most peaceful alternative, but if we look at history, it doesn't work out that way usually. So if I had to bet on how both Russia and China would try to retaliate against the United States, I think Latin America would be in the top of my head. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful day.